Hey, how's it going, folks? This is Hellbent, and this tutorial is a special request from somebody who's been having some issues with passing values between scripts. Now, before I begin this tutorial is not going to be like a lot of the other tutorials that I do, where I make sure I have a good understanding of the things that I'm talking about, and I make sure that you are able to understand everything. So one of the things that I try never to do is have code that's on the screen where I'll point at it and say, you see this stuff here? Don't worry about it. I don't like it going through with watching other kind of tutorials where people do that, where they have something on the screen that says, they'll say, see all this stuff that's actually doing all the work. Don't worry about that stuff. Just worry about this little tiny little thing that's doing virtually nothing of the work, and just focus on that. Don't worry about that stuff that's really, really important, and just focus on this little tiny thing that isn't too important. I don't like when other people do that, and I really don't like doing that. But in order for me to do this at this point, I kind of have to do that. So I'm going to be including things that, for one, I don't know. I'm pretty much just doing copy and paste with certain things, and therefore I can't talk about them and say, this is what this is doing, and etc., etc. I can't even say whether they're actual things that I'm creating or whether they're things that actually exist. So we're going to be looking at some COM object stuff, and this is an area that I've never had much of a use for, so I haven't decided to invest any time in trying to pick it up. I've done like one script where I did some COM object stuff, but other than that, it's something that I haven't really had an interest in, so I haven't invested my time in picking it up. Okay, that said, so like I said, we're going to be looking at ways that you can pass values between scripts. So let's say if I have two scripts running, how can I pass values in between them? And then, of course, with those values, you'll do different things. So let's look up the first way. So the first way we're going to look at is just setting some environmental variables. Now, once again, like I said, I'm going to be talking out of my ass for some of this stuff. So if I get the terminology wrong, or if I explain it in a way that isn't actually what it actually is, then so be it. But anyway, so we're going to be passing some environmental variables, and what an environmental variable is Google is your friend, because I'm not going to try to just read what Google told me and try to pass it off as if I really know. But from what I gather, it's variables that are going to be held by the operating system. So this is regardless of the script that I'm running, these variables are held somewhere else. They're not local to the script itself. So anyways, let's go ahead, and what we're going to do first is we're going to create a variable that is going to be used by any script that we launch from this script. So we have this first script, and then we're going to launch a second script from this script. So we're going to have run blah 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 script. And then what we're going to do is, as soon as that script gets launched, it's going to inherit all the environmental variables that we create in this first script. So one of the ways I was thinking that, now I probably would never do this, and you probably would never do this either, but one of the ways that I could foresee that this thing could be kind of useful is, normally, let's say if you have a function or something like that, usually you'll have it in another. It'll either be in another file that you're including in this, or it'll be directly inside of this script. One way that I could see that you could perhaps use this kind of thing is you could have a function that, instead of including it into a script, all you would do is launch that function from this script, and the environmental variables would be the parameters that you're passing into that function. Once again, I don't know why you would want to do that, but I think that's one possible way that you can go about doing that. So let's go ahead and we're going to create a couple environmental variables. Actually, we'll just start with one. I think one is enough. So with this, as soon as we launch the second script, so we're going to use this to launch a second script. The second that we launch that second script, any environmental variables that we've created in here are going to be included in that other one. But after we launch that script, if we make changes to those variables in this first script, they're not going to be seen by the second script. We would actually have to relaunch the second script in order for them to get an updated copy of those variables. Or at least that's as far as I know about it. So let's go ahead and we'll create a couple of variables. Let's go environmental set. So we're going to create an environmental variable, and we're going to name it var1. And now we need to set a value to it. Now the value here, it's not express. You can't use an expression in here, or it's you can't just use a variable's name. So if you want to include a variable in this value parameter here, you're going to have to either write it as an expression, or you're going to have to have it with percentage marks around it. So we're just going to pass a value of 1. We're going to set a value of 1 to this to begin with. No, you know what? The variable that we're going to be naming our environmental variable, I'm also going to actually set a value to it, because what we'll do is we'll increment it in a hotkey. So I'm going to set its value to 1, and then instead of putting this here, I'm going to put whatever value we have in var1. Okay, so here we go. We have this, and now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a hotkey. And I like using number pad because it's keys that I don't use that often unless I'm using them specifically as a hotkey. So I'm going to use number pad 1. And what am I going to do here? To begin with, I'm just going to have this run my other script. So I already have the other script created. All it has in it so far is just single instance force. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run that script. So its name is passing So as soon as I press number pad 1, it's going to launch the second script. Now if we go over to the second script, what I'm going to do is have it so that way if I press number pad 2, we are going to if I press number pad 2, what we're going to do is we're going to get the value that is in our environmental variable. So I'm going to say environment get, and my output variable, I'm just going to call it temp var, and now I need the name of the environmental variable that I'm going to be getting, which we had set to var1. Okay, and next what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a tooltip that displays the value of our temp var. Let me see. Okay, I think we have enough here to run a first draft of this. So I'm going to save both of these, and I'm going to run the first script. Okay, so the script should be running. So if I hit number pad 1, it should launch the second script. Okay, the other script should be running now. So if I hit number pad 2, it should give us a tooltip with the value that was stored in our var1. And there we go. We can see that the value is 1. So if I come back to the first script and if I change this to, let's say, 5, and if I run this again, If I hit number pad 1, it's going to launch our second script, and if I hit number pad 2, it's going to get the value that's in that environmental variable and display it in a tooltip, which is 5. Okay, so this is one way that we can pass a value. Now, one of the things about this, one of the issues about this that I'll point out is I'm going to take this run outside of the number pad 1, and I'm going to put it actually into the auto execute area of my script. So I'm going to put a return, and then just above the return I'm going to have it launch the script. So instead of me pressing number pad 1 to launch that second script, as soon as I run the script it's going to automatically launch it. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this var1 variable and I'm just going to add 1 to its value. So it's going to start at 5, but as soon as I press number pad 1, it's going to increment it to 6 and then 7, etc., etc. What I'm also going to do is put another copy of our set inside of here. Okay, I think everything with the second script should be fine. So now as soon as I run this script, it's going to run the second script, and then when I hit number pad 1, it should update the value of the var1 by increment it up by 1, and then it should set that as the environmental variable. And then when I come into here, each time that I press number pad 2, it should get that value and display it. But like I said, doing it this way, it's as soon as we launch that script, it's only then it's going to grab all that information, but we have no way of actually updating it. So if I hit number pad 2, which is from the second script, if I hit number pad 2, I can see that the value is 5, which is what we have it up here. You know what? Let me back off for a second. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put a tooltip in here as well, and we're going to display the value of var1. So that way we have 2 copies of it. So I'm going to run this again. If I hit number pad 2, which is from the second script, I can see that we have 5. Now if I hit number pad 1, we'll get a new tooltip with the new value of that variable. So we can see that now it's 6, but if I go back and press number pad 2 again, the other one still only has that initial value. So it's still reading as 5. And if I hit number pad 1 a couple more times to increment it up, so it's now the actual value is 14, but this second script still only has the initial value that it had. So it's still reading as 5. Now this isn't, probably most of the time you're not going to be able to do this, but what we can do in this example, perhaps you'll be able to do it like this, is where each time I increment it, I'm also going to relaunch that script. So it'll get a copy of the current values. But once again, if this script is doing something that I can't just constantly run it over and over again, then this isn't going to be a very good way of doing this. And we'll get into a better way after I'm done with this. So now if I run this, if I hit number pad 2, we should get a value of 5. And if I hit number pad 1, what it's going to do is it's going to completely relaunch this. So this tooltip is going to disappear, and we'll just see this one here. So I'm going to get this up to, let's say, 13. Now if I press number pad 2, because each time I was pressing this number pad 1, it's launching a new instance of that second script, the value that I'll get should line up with this one here. Okay, so like I said, if I wanted to do it like this, I would have to, every single time I change that value, in order for me to actually see it in the second script like this, I would actually have to rerun that whole script again. Okay, so this is just one way. Now for a better way of actually setting it. Now, like I said at the beginning, I don't have barely any experience using COM objects, etc., etc. It just hasn't been something that's been on my list of things to do. So take this with a grain of salt when I go through how to set this up, because I have no idea. Like some things I'll be using what I assume are variables, but I can't say if these are actually things. Like if these things actually exist outside of me just creating a normal variable. Like if I come here, I can say var equals 1, right? This is just a normal variable. But some of the things I'll be doing now, I don't know if they are actual things, not just variables that I'm just creating. Okay, so the way we're going to pass values this time is we're going to use COM objects, and I have it written down on a piece of paper here, the syntax or the structure of this, and then I'll show you how we can manipulate it. At least at the end you'll be able to manipulate this stuff, even if I haven't led up to what everything means, etc. So let me just quickly copy this, type this out, and I'm a very slow typer. In fact, I have to actually look at my keys to type. Oh, I mistyped. Okay, so object shell, don't know if this is an actual thing or if this is just something I'm inventing right now. Don't know, can't tell you. And it's going to, in here, looks like we're passing to a function, and we are going to be passing something. Once again, I have no idea what it is. wscript .shell. What this is, your guess is as good as mine. If you do know what this is, don't feel obliged to put a comment down below, because it doesn't really matter. Sooner or later, I'll have a need for this kind of stuff, and I'm sure that I'll pick it up without having to spend your time typing this out. Okay, next is object env. Once again, I don't know if this is something that I'm creating here or if this is something that actually exists. Object shell dot environment. Let me just make sure I'm spelling everything right. And in here, once again, I don't know the context of this. I don't know if this is an actual thing or so. It looks like we're going to be accessing something called a volatile environmental variable, which this one is going to be, my impression of it is that this is actually part of Windows. So it has nothing to do with us creating this for a specific script. We're going to actually be updating Windows with some volatile environmental variables that we can use any script to access, which is the difference between what we did with the last one, where we're just setting basically local variables that can be a copy of it's passed to the script that gets, or whatever program gets run with it. And then the last thing is to set a value. See, once again, no, this is wrong. Once again, I don't know where this item is coming from. Like, this obviously must be a thing, but what that thing is, you got me. I would have to spend perhaps weeks or months using this kind of stuff to pick it up to the point where I would feel happy that I know it. Okay, so in here, now the first part, I believe, is what we're doing is we're setting up the ability to create a volatile environmental variable within the Windows system. Once again, I don't know what I'm talking about, so I'm just talking out of my ass here. This next part here, what we're going to do is we're going to actually create a variable's name and then give it a value. So this is basically this is the type. This is the type of the thing that we're creating, and then this is the actual thing we're creating. So I'm going to call this var1. So I've created this item var1, and I'm going to set a value. Let's create a value of I'll give it a value of 5. No. I'm going to give it a value of 1. I had worked out, I'd gone over a couple of examples before I started recording this, but I didn't bother to keep them. So I'm trying to think of what, because I have a specific thing that I want to do, but I don't remember exactly what that thing was. You know what? What I'm going to do instead of hard coding a value here, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use that variable's name also to contain the value. So I'm not just using it as a name of the variable, I'm also getting the value from it. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put all of this inside of a hotkey. Okay. So I think I have enough here for the first part. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to the second one. And what did I copy? I copied everything. Okay. And in the second one, I'm going to use the number pad 2. And instead of putting a value into it, what I'm going to do is instead I'm going to display the value of that. So I can get rid of this because I'm not going to be setting it. All I want to do is just access the value now. So what I can do is, you know what? I don't like message boxes. So what I'm going to do is I'll just put a tooltip. And in here, what I'm going to do once again is before it encounters my hotkey, I'll put in a return, and I'm going to hard code this to a value of 0, and each time I press this, I'm going to take that and add 1 to its value. So the first time I run it, it's going to be 0, but as soon as I press number pad 1, it's going to create that variable and update it with the new value, which will be 1 the first time, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4. In our second script, we're going to get that value and display it on a tooltip. So each time I press number pad 1, it'll update the value, and then all I have to do is press number pad 2 to get that current value. So once again, this time I don't have to launch that second script with the first one. I can run this independently, and I can run this one independently. So if I hit number pad 1, if I hit number pad 2, I should get nothing, hopefully. So I've gotten nothing from hitting number pad 2. Now if I hit number pad 1, it's going to actually create that and increment its value to 1. Now if I hit number pad 2, we should get a tooltip with the number 1 on it. And there we go. Now if I hit number pad 1 a couple of times, this should be somewhere around 10 now. 11. Right? Etc. etc. So here I'm passing value. The script can read a variable that was created by another script. Let's do something that's a little bit more practical. Instead of using hotkeys, this time what we're going to do is I'm going to use hotkeys still to set that value. And in here, instead of doing that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an exit. just so I don't have to add persistent. I'm going to add a hotkey to this one just so I don't have to add persistent to the script. Let's create a timer. I'm going to call it watch, and I'll set it to, I can set this to whatever I want, but I'll make it so that way it happens really quickly. So I'll set it to 10 milliseconds. So it'll run through this watch every 10 milliseconds. In here, what do I want to do? What I want to do in here is I want to get the value of this object that we've created over here, or this variable that we've created over here. So I am going to instead of keeping it in this, I'm going to create another variable that's going to actually store the value of this. I don't really need to do that, but usually I'll, if I have something like this, rather than risk changing things that I don't want to change, I can just dump it into a temporary variable. So basically I'm taking the value that's in this variable and just making a copy into this variable. Now I'm just going to set a condition. I'm going to say if temp variable equals, what did I have this one set to begin with? I have it set to, it'll be 1 the first time it's created, but so I'll say if this equals 5, we're going to get it to do something. Now, depending on what I'm going to get this to do, what I actually probably want to do is set another variable as a control variable. So I'll say, and I'll create a variable called run1. If run1 equals 0. If run1, what I can also do, instead of doing this, what I can do is inside of here, I can change the value of this back to something else. But for this, I'm not gonna. I want to keep this this variable here. I want it to remain intact. So let's say if I keep pressing it, its a value will go from 0 to 5, and then eventually it'll be 6, and then eventually it'll be 7. So I can create a bunch of these different conditions that are going to constantly look at this ever increasing value. So what I'm going to do, instead of changing that each time it comes into here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a control variable, and outside here somewhere, I'm going to set its value to 0. So if this statement ends up being true, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that control variable and say that it no longer equals 0. So now, even though the temp variable, each time this runs through, the temp variable still might be 5, but because this run variable isn't going to be 0 anymore, it's not going to constantly run this over and over and over again. And that's useful if I'm going to do something like run the calculator, or whatever other thing I might want to do. Let me make sure I have everything. And I think we have a tooltip in here to tell us. No, we don't. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to create a tooltip in here that'll tell us the current value of our temp var. Let me see. Up until, so as soon as I run this, this tooltip isn't going to exist until until this variable finally equals something. So I think I have enough to run this script. So I'm going to go ahead and run the first one. I'm going to try to run the second one, which is probably going to relaunch that first one again. Yes. This is one thing that I forgot, that I almost forgot to mention. Because we're not actually dealing with a variable that's part of this script, what we need to do is, if I want this variable to be back the way it was before, each time I run this script, I'm going to need to hard reset that value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this here, because even though I'm running this fresh right now, the last time I had ran this, we ended with that variable equaling 22. So what I'm going to do is, before we go right in my auto execute, as soon as I run this script again, it's going to set that environmental variable back to a value that I want it to be at the beginning. Okay, there we go. So now it's back to 0, and this 0 is part of our watch function. So this script is watching a value in a variable, and if it equals something, then we're going to do something. And the way we're controlling that variable is through this first script. So we're doing this manually, but of course we could have this set up that it's doing it automatically. So if I hit number pad 1, the value gets incremented up, so now the second script is showing that the value is 2. If I do number pad 1 again, and again, and then finally, once that value equals our condition here of equaling 5, we should get it running the calculator. And there we go. So here we've passed a value between scripts, and now we'll do one quick last example where, instead of having it run this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have it exit app. But before it does that, I'll have them will pop up a message box that says the script is about to exit, and then it'll exit. Okay, I need to run this one again. Okay, so hopefully everything's working properly. So if I hit number pad 1, it'll increment the value, and it's being seen by the second script. Once it gets to 5, it'll give us our message that says the script is about to exit, and then if I do this, we should see an exit code down here. And there we go. Okay, so I hope this helps those of you that are looking for ways of passing values between scripts. Like I said, this is a topic that I don't have much of experience in, but I think if you go through this and play around with some examples, you'll get something that you need for your own scripts. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to hit that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next one.